morning. Thank you so much for joining us to hear about the Open Arts Journal. Leon and I have been working on the journal for a good number of years, since 2011. We're both, as Neelam said, from the Art History department. My PhD is in art history. I'm an associate lecturer and honorary associate in the department, and managing editor of the journal, as Neelam said. Leon, the editor-in-chief, and if I may say, the visionary of the journal. And we both feel very privileged to be invited to participate in Open Research Week. What a brilliant initiative. Many thanks to research leads Claire Taylor and Shaf Tawhi for nominating us, and to Neelam and team. I should say at the beginning that the journal has benefited from the support of FAS and other funders, and Leon will say more about that in due course. I want to begin by referring to what we feel is the importance of the Open Arts Journal in terms of its role in disseminating new and groundbreaking research in the arts, and what our ethos of openness means. So first and foremost, we're committed to providing genuinely open access content. Leon has provided the link for you to the journal. We're open to a very wide range of content. We publish, in the arts, we publish contributions from academics, artists, architects, museum professionals, and others. And as such, we challenge the tendency to over-specialization that can compromise arts and humanities. Some of our issues do focus, and very constructively and productively so, on a specific time and place, but we're open to exploring creative and critical questions that stand over and above a particular historical period of interest. And we're seeking ways to press beyond this, engaging more widely and benefiting from approaches other than the historical. Moreover, we're very proud that working on the journal, working with colleagues both within the OU and outside the OU, continues to be, for us, extremely enjoyable and inclusive. Over to you, Leon.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah, it continues to be constructive and enjoyable too. And to give a bit of background on sort of how that's done, I'll mention that our business case is really to focus on the sustainability of open access publishing, and to maintain open access approaches in sort of every way. And I'll say a bit more about what that means for us. When we started out with the journal, we were quite aware of the fact that many of the dominant platforms for academic publishing that are free for their readers operate by drawing fees from their contributors. And that seemed to us an arrangement that sort of frustrated, if not subverted, the opportunities presented by digital distribution of academic scholarship for free and open access, and the use of such published material, as it were, on demand. So what we've done with the journal is we continue to avoid those arrangements, and we strive to retain, most importantly, we strive to retain academic control of the journal, academic ownership of it. Now, there's an upside and there's a downside to that. So downside, quite obviously, is greater intensity of our roles in the journal. Alice and I coordinate a team of journal staff and guest editors. We regularly undertake business planning. We assign employment contracts. We deal with the long-term academic planning. We maintain an editorial board. We deal with the legal safeguarding of publishing. So all the sorts of things that, most of those things probably rest with a publisher, but they're in our hands in this case. An upside, though, is the way that we can do all of that and reflect our passion for developing research and in general for the open access publishing agenda. I believe through the journal, we show how open access can serve arts and humanities research sort of in the round, including across academic disciplines, but also stakeholder groups, which is what Alice had mentioned, and in then reaching also beyond the higher education sector. The funding for the journal, I've put some of that recent funding notes on that on the slide towards the bottom. Seed funding came from the Open University all those years ago, 13, 14 years ago. And then the journal served as a vehicle for generating income to sort of sustain its costs, to sustain the staffing costs of this activity. Funding in the past 5 years, I've listed there on the slide, has come from a range of sources. Some of it from the STEM faculty at the Open University, from the design group for issue 9, the Baron Thyssen Centre in Classical Studies at the Open University, and also externally from the AHRC, from the Arts and Humanities Research Council for issue 13. Some of the journal articles have been repurposed, I should mention, in curriculum production. So we've seen material having a dual purpose in our teaching mission at the OU. And we know that certain articles are used for teaching in other universities. And we've also seen the material being published in hard copy. So we've seen through a partnership with Manchester University Press and with funding from the Legal Human Trust, the publication of 2 books, 2 standalone books. What this has done is it has produced, go to slide 4, material that's high quality, as Alice has said, peer reviewed and obviously freely available. And we've listed on this slide the issues that we've covered. The scope, it's obviously a wide scope, thematic scope, scope for new research that we've disseminated through the journal. We find contributors have found this really appealing. Our authors have enjoyed really the being able to stretch their legs with this. There are things we can do with open access publishing that we probably couldn't do with conventional publishing. And those have to do in part with our use of images and the generous way in which each of these issues have been illustrated with accompanying images. Alice, I think, wanted to make a brief comment on that.
Yeah.
Before I move to the next slide, yeah.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that often our contributors are very surprised that we don't set a maximum number of images per essay, per issue, because the scope is, we're open to having many images, as many as authors need, and flexibility, bearing in mind we're working with a PDF A4, there's flexibility to be able to scale within that. One of our issues has an image gallery. We publish visual essays as well, in some occasions where that's relevant. And images aren't simply illustrative. We use them as evidence for developing arguments. The other last point is that we do require authors to cover the costs, any costs related to images, copyright, and so on. But they do then have access to the image rights expertise at the OU. Thanks, Liam. Thank
you, Alice. And we can take up any discussion about images. It's quite a big topic in our Q&A, if anyone's interested about that. What we'd like to do just for the rest of the presentation is just focus in on 2 of the themed issues. This, first of all, issue number 5, This was a themed issue that resulted from a collaboration that we had with colleagues at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and with the Tropen Museum, the Royal Tropical Institute Museum, and an arts charity, the Institute of International Visual Arts, or INVA, in London. And what we did is we had events at the Tropen Museum in Amsterdam and an event in London at INVA with artists and curators from all over the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean, as well as the global diasporas for those communities. And essentially, we managed to bring together some very good material from artists, curators, policymakers, scholars, and so on for this issue. And it resulted, in fact, in a book with Manchester University Press. It also lent, well, the project behind the issue gave rise to quite sort of similarly conceived events and collaborations in the Caribbean itself, which was a nice kind of outcome. And it lent support to, I would say, marginalized and excluded individuals in the arts by producing material that they could go on to use in their studies or in their future careers. The second, handing back to Alice, about issue 11 of the journal, if I may.
Yeah, so this one is our current, most recent issue from last summer. Dwelling on the Everyday, Houses, Ghosts, Ellipses. It's a collaboration with Helen Hills, Professor Emerita at the University of York, and it has its origins in 2 workshops which were funded in part by FAS from July 2022. And that's often the case with our issues, that they originate in a conference panel or a symposium or a workshop. And the core idea for this one was about the artist's house and the allure of visiting an artist or writer's home and its presentation as a house museum. So Helen and I share an interest in shrines and sacred relics in early modernity, and that gave us a way into thinking about the aura of the artist's house, the way that possessions of celebrated people are fetishized and become kind of secular relics. And we wanted to challenge the great genius narratives conventionally portrayed in artists' houses that kind of collapse house and work and artist into one. So by dwelling on the everyday, we were able to cast the net quite wide and include studies of the homes of non-artists, of people who are not famous, of people who are marginalized or invisibilized. So we're interested in the politics of erasure, people overlooked, as well as asking questions about social class and gender and sexuality and race, as well as this theme of sacred and sacrality, matter and materiality. So in the end, we have 10 essays and quite a bulky introduction, and as I say, very diverse content. And as I say, that's the model that works for us. This themed issue that tested and proven through a conference. Guest editor submits an application, which goes to the board, and then the process, in this case, I was one of the guest editors, but the process is then supported by the editors, consultant editors. And so on that note, we welcome very much proposals for themed issues from prospective guest editors. Leon?
Thank you, Alice, for that. Yes, I mean, I think what attracts contributors to the journal, as well as the visibility of the journal and the lengths that we go to maintain, well, a social media presence, but more particularly to ensure the high sort of online searchability and visibility of the content itself. And as well as that, I think the way that we have tried to set an example for collaborative and accessibly published research, and to maintain relationships with our contributors, so which we can do, to the scale of this journal, to have those lasting relationships with authors and contributors means also that the journal content circulates and it gets recommended, its content is recommended and it's cited. This is really the last slide. Yeah, of course it is. The last slide, a summary really in response to that question about how open access publishing can support and expand public-facing research in the arts and humanities. I mean, for us, I think above all, open access is a means, a way of community building, and that community ought to be as wide as possible, as widely ranging in its interests. The content we produce is high in significance and quality, in originality and rigor. The key words, I think, for the Open Arts Journal are that it's cross-cutting, it's interdisciplinary, it's international, and it offers a really excellent fit for the arts and humanities, the entire sort of medium and the way that we go about doing this. As such, I'd say the Open Arts Journal continues to flourish. It's growing and flourishing, and we're at the moment rather involved in production of 2 new issues, future issues, which happen to be led by Open University researchers in a wide range of disciplines that include music, English, and art history. I'm going to leave the slides there, and I know Nicola is there in the background to helpfully chair us through a Q&A.